also have one.
Oh,
I'd like to add double I to the executive session.
okay. Any other changes to the agenda? Item 6, disclosures,
Not for me, Madam Chair.
Nor I.
nor I. Item 7,
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We're not going to do this in 11 minutes, but we're
No.
moving right along here.
Can we wait 1 second till Ben gets over here?
Sure.
Ben is here.
Oh, where's he at? Oh, there you are. I didn't even, sorry, Ben.
Sorry, I'm not ready yet.
You're not quite ready yet? Maybe we can jump to,
So we do
Number-
9 and then go back to 8.
Okay, we certainly
maybe do
can.
9 and 10 for Jake and then
Okay,
we could go back. Is that all right with you, Josh? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
we're going to jump to item 9. Present for approval, final acceptance of the elections wall demolition at the courthouse and direct the clerk to advertise for final payment to Prairie Equipment LLC for the balance due on the 41st day following the first advertisement. The final cost of the contract was $4,989.78. Good morning, Jake.
Commissioners, good morning. This is for the acceptance and completion of the demolition of the wall over in the elections building per Kayla's request. The contractor got in there, got it done. They gave us a bid, and the bid is what the final cost was. And this is just to advertise for that completion per state statute and close out the project and be able to move on. So this is.
I just have one question because you guys have two different numbers. The contractor's price was $49,889.78, and the original bid price and final cost was $49,4981. Which number
Have
did you
to
use?
look at that. The last number is the one that
The
we're
49.89.
invoiced for.
Your invoice for $49,4981.
Or
I
49.
believe it was 49.89.78.
89.
Okay.
That is the one that we are asking to advertise for
Okay.
and pay the contractor.
Because there's actually three numbers.
I'm just keeping you on your toes.
No one could ever
They're
make it.
one's $1 off,
Yeah.
one's, okay.
49.89.70.
How about, I would move that we approve no more than $4,989.78.
Second.
All those in favor?
And direct the clerk to advertise.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. It was like trying to catch up with a little jackrabbit there.
Yes.
Item 10, present for approval, request for submittal of statement of qualifications for creation of a safety action for safe streets in Albany County, Wyoming, and direct the clerk to advertise.
Good morning, this is
Morning.
me again.
Okay,
So we're just requesting to advertise for the RFQ for the solicitation to hire a consultant to prepare the safety plan ultimately for the project. And the grant is about 1.1 million, and the total cost of the project is about 1.4. And so the cost is split between the city and the county. The more burdensome cost being to the city as they have more streets, more roads, more data to gather.
Does this go throughout the county, or is there a 10-mile band around the city?
No, it's through the entire county, and it includes all of the city streets, all of the, it includes I-80, all of the other wideout highways, basically all roads that are sort of governed under either the county, the city, or other state or public entity.
so this will include Highway 130 through Centennial.
Yes, up to the county line.
Okay,
Yes,
because Centennial needs some work done.
yeah.
For
It
safety
probably
issues.
won't include
It'll include an analysis, but maybe not.
Yeah, but that's not the actual,
It'll include the analysis and a recommendation of safety improvements,
Mhm.
but it won't
do those
result in the
improvements.
construction of those safety improvements necessarily. We're getting this grant and we're getting all of these items in order so we can apply for more grants down the road to implement the safety.
Right. And of course, Rock River
recommendations.
has the same kind of an issue.
Correct, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Jake, just one quick question. Will they take the roads at different times? Like for instance, 4th of July or Centennial could be a bit of a.
In the evening on the
Yes.
4th of
Yeah,
July.
I don't
Driving through that
exactly
would be
know what our exact data will be because we are on a timeline to get this done for the grant funding. But we do have a plan to do traffic safety and traffic analysis, and YDOT has quite an array of data that we will pull from. And then we'll take a static reading and then we'll probably project that out to an assumed 1 year traffic data or traffic count, and then make those recommendations on the 20-year future sort of projection of that traffic.
Thanks, Jake.
I'm going to suggest that we get video of Centennial on the 4th of July.
Oh, there's plenty of it out there.
I mean, because it's very bad, very dangerous. And so any other, like Rock River or wherever, if there's a certain time that they have where it's particularly dangerous, maybe they can provide video too.
And part of the process will be go out to public comment to sort of ascertain what people are seeing out there.
I guess
instead of
I'm
just
asking
doing
for public comment to come in,
it.
in the form of picture. Okay. All right.
Thanks. I move that we approve the request for submittal, a statement of qualification for creation of the safety action for safe streets in Albany County, Wyoming, and direct the clerk to advertise.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Ben, are you ready or do we need to go on for a little bit?
I'm ready.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thanks for having me today. My name is Josh Durrell. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. We are an agency that it's a state agency, and our intent is really to develop the future and develop the future opportunities for Wyomingites by developing mostly local capacity. And how do we make sure that our local communities are able to grow if they so choose? And over the course of our history, which is about 26 years as a state agency, we've done a number of different ways to help communities grow, whether that's put in infrastructure, whether that is provide training, whether that is the programs that we do throughout the state. And over the last few years, we've spent an awful lot of time working with local communities to just understand what are the barriers to growth throughout the state. And there are infrastructure barriers. There are significant challenges with our fiscal system and the revenue that local communities can generate in order to do the things that they need to do to maintain their current size. And definitely there's a struggle to grow. And our basis and our perspective on the state of Wyoming is that we need to be growing or we are declining. There is no stasis. And so as that is our perspective, we've really encouraged communities to look hard at what it's going to take to grow and what is stopping them from growing. This isn't always palatable because there's a sentiment that Wyoming doesn't want to grow. And so one of the things that we've run into over the years are significant myths about Wyoming and growth. And so one of the things we wanted to address today with the county commission and as well as others in the community is that those myths might be stopping us from growing more than our infrastructure needs and the local capacity is. And so we thought we would do a little bit of separating myth from reality. And if you want to jump to slide 3, we can kind of start with a few different things that we've run into. One of the things that we feel is really important for us to do is to understand how a local community sees themselves, sees the state, and sees the future. And one of the challenges that we have is that a lot of times people think, well, things are just fine. We don't need to change anything. Why would we want to change anything? And if we jump to the next slide, I'll break this myth for you that Wyoming's economy is doing just fine. If you look at our what you might consider the state GDP, which is all of the economic activity in the state, we are the orange line on this graph. And that is it's either dropping since 2008 or it's in stasis, while the blue lines, which are our neighboring states, their gross state products are increasing. So we are stagnant or declining while our neighbors are doing just fine. And to us, that's not okay. As I mentioned, our perspective is that we need to be growing or we're declining. And we don't see this as a positive thing. Now, what I will tell you is, if you jump to the next slide.
Josh, I have a quick question.
You bet.
Do you know what the top and the bottom lines are on that?
The very top line is Alaska.
Okay.
So the bottom one, I don't know.
Okay.
There are some southern states that are challenged a little bit right now, Mississippi.
I just, for framing
Yep.
reference.
Yep. One of the things that I find, though, is that GDP is sort of a nebulous number, right? What does GDP mean? How does it affect me as an individual? And so we started to dig down and look at some things that do affect us as individuals in the state. And so if you look at the graph on the left, what it tells us is that our employment numbers are flat. That means that there are no job opportunities. The job opportunities are not increasing in the state. They are staying relatively flat. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Hoff, what is at the bottom there? Well, on this one, we're pretty darn close. And that's just not okay with us. As I mentioned, we're the economic development agency for the state. That's not okay that there are less opportunities than in other places. The other thing that is really concerning for our citizens is that the wages are declining. So our median wage is dropping, and we're down toward the bottom again in the nation of wages. And a lot of times people will say, well, gosh, that's okay because we've had such high wages for so long, it was bound to level off. And I think to myself, well, that sounds really good unless you're the person earning a wage that's less than everybody else, right? Like, we want to see an upward trajectory for Wyoming. So those two things are important. If we jump to the next slide, you'll also notice that on the left-hand side, you'll see our overall population is the top line. And our workforce, our labor force, is on the bottom. And what you'll notice is that that gap is increasing. So the gap between our population and our workforce is increasing. That is not a good number from an economist standpoint, because what that indicates is that there are more people in the system, but there are not that many people actually working in the system. And that is a challenge. The demographic band of 65 and above is the only band of population that is growing right now. That is also a concern. It means our population is aging. And again, as somebody who is also aging, I'm okay with that a little bit, but from an economist standpoint, that means that there's some challenges coming down the road. The other one, if we focus on sort of like the young people in our state, if you look at the right-hand side of the curve or of the graphics there, you'll notice that this graph indicates the out-migration in all of the states in the union. That means that you were born in Wyoming and you either stay or leave. We are the top line in that. That means that more of our people leave than any other state. And our people who are born in Wyoming leave at a rate that's twice the national average. Now, this is something that we all have come to call brain drain, and it's a persistent problem in Wyoming. We know that. And the challenge with calling it brain drain is that it sort of dehumanizes the issue. So what I think about is those brains as having names like Olivia, Grace, Ruby, and Maddox. Those are my 4 kids. And if I do the basic math, chances are pretty good that 3 of those 4 will have to leave the state to chase their ambition. And again, as somebody who's a dad and somebody who's looking at the economy, that's not okay with me. And so we look at it as a real challenge for our economy, is how do we prepare ourselves for the future when, at least 2/3 of our youth leave. And so those are things that indicate to us that there's a challenge. There's a problem out there. So saying that Wyoming's economy is doing just fine is probably because our revenue picture is good at the state. But again, revenue doesn't paint the entire picture of our economy. In fact, it paints a pretty disjointed view of the economy. And so hopefully that helps everybody understand the problem that we're focused on. And if we jump to the next slide, it's not just the data that we have from an economist standpoint. It's actually, we've done some polling to understand what people feel in the state. We did a poll back in September of 500, a little over 500 residents in the state, and found that 3 out of 4 of them felt like that their local economy was stagnant or in decline. So again, this is backed up by data. It's backed up by sentiment. I think there's a real cause for us to do something about that and to make sure that we're preparing for the future. Jumping to the next slide, these are not going to be, this data is not going to shock anyone. Cost of living and housing availability are on the top of the list of concerns of residents. And I think that we can all agree that those are challenges that if you talk to citizens in your town, you're going to find that they're going to say that costs are going up and they're having a hard time, especially if you talk to someone in their 20s or early 30s. The idea of owning a home is kind of a foreign concept to a lot of folks. And I think that that's a challenge that we've got to address. It's not something that we're alone in the nation. These are challenges that are nationwide. But we've got to work on challenges or solutions at the local level to fix them. Any questions before I move on to the next myth?
Yeah, Josh, so with the wage stagnating and the cost going up, that just exacerbates the housing problems. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're seeing those compounding effects, Commissioner, and what we're seeing is a compounding effect, but it's not being vocalized. It's not realized in the state or at a local level like it needs to be. And we'll talk more about maybe some ways to do that. We've been engaging in some ways to work on that. But I think what we're seeing is an opportunity to make some changes that if we don't, it's pretty clear that our society can be pretty mobile. And when you're in your early 20s, you're super mobile. And so going to another state is something that people in Wyoming have sort of grown accustomed to doing. And we would like to do everything we can to create the opportunities here. But you're absolutely right. Those compounding effects are powerful.
And then has the Business Council done any research into dollars spent in complete local businesses versus dollars spent in like Amazon, what that does, because a fraction of that dollar is also a fraction of a job and you're offloading it to another state. Whereas if you did it to a complete local business, that money recycles. Have you ever done that type of analysis?
We have not. We have not at this point. Great question. That's perhaps a good area to look into. I think a number of our programs are intended to look at like main streets and intended to fill those gaps so that new businesses can start in Wyoming and stay in Wyoming. But we haven't looked at that specifically. It's a good area to think about. Thank you.
And that to Pete's point is that's been going on in Laramie since I was a little girl, not to Amazon, but to out of state. And that's nothing new. And as being involved in the downtown for years and years and years, that's a sad, sad story. Because Laramie's downtown used to be really vibrant. So, anyway.
Madam Chair, I think it might be a good thing to have Trey Sherwood come in from Laramie Main Street and talk a little bit about some of the new businesses that are coming in and maybe some of that turnover that's happening. I think that would be a really interesting, thing to look at. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but you're absolutely right. I think that there's a key element there.
But didn't the Business Council do a study on that? I'm trying to think now really quick. Over regulations that has been very detrimental and very possibly intended to keep businesses away?
Yeah. Madam Chair, we have been working closely on regulatory reform with a number of communities we find that we have seen, especially when it comes to housing, that we're overregulated and we don't have the money for infrastructure to allow developers to do this at a cost that is maybe comparable to other places. And those two things are really a big challenge for us. And so we have been working with communities to say, you may want to consider lowering your regulatory burden so that it encourages growth. And we need to understand the fiscal system so that we can pay for some of the infrastructure that is in place or needed by those developers. We have programs that can do that. However, we feel like there's a bigger problem there. And so we're trying to not only put a Band-Aid on it, but we're trying to kind of understand the source of the problem and work on that. So thank you for the question. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a question. It was pretty direct.
And I will say, I was at a contractor gathering that the city put on last Friday that was very productive amongst Lucas Witt and the contractors in the community to that end. So.
If we jump to the next myth is about population. There's this idea that, yeah, those young people leave, but they all come back. And if we jump to the next slide, I can tell you that some do come back, but not in numbers that matter. This nice little mosaic is a chart of the current population and where those folks were born. You can see that Wyoming, people who are born in Wyoming represent about 42% or 43% of our population today. And so you start to do the math from the number of people who outmigrate, which is right around over 60%. So some do come back, but not that much. In fact, the majority of our population were born elsewhere. Nothing wrong with that. I think the sharing of ideas and the building of a culture requires that kind of mobility and that sort of kind of a different group, a melting pot, if you will. And I think that's really important. However, the idea that people leave and come back is it's a myth, and we want to work on changing that so that there are opportunities for Wyomingians. So if we jump to the next slide, there's a sentiment out there that our state is broke. That, well, gosh, we'd love to fix all these problems, but we just don't have the money to do that. And that. I could probably spend way more time than this meeting has even allotted on the idea there. But I want to just jump to the next slide and talk a little bit about just our rainy day fund is twice as big as any other state in the unions. So we can run for twice as long as any other state in the union. Now, there are a lot of rules around that rainy day fund. There are a lot of things that we've got to sort of like think about when we do that. However, even Alaska, which has a volatile revenue system just like we do, based on the outside world and based on commodity prices, even Alaska only has half the days that we do to run our state government. I'm not advocating that we get rid of it. I'm not advocating that we completely, do something that's crazy. However, I do think that we need to begin investing in our future. And I do think that we have not just the funds in the rainy day fund, which is probably at this time is almost $2 billion. At the time of this graphic, it was 1.5. Now it's probably closer to 2. And you got to ask yourself, just how long do we really need to run the state if we're not getting any revenue? Shouldn't we worry about changing the revenue situation? That is just our rainy day fund. Our sovereign wealth fund is really, really enviable by the rest of the nation. And I just believe that we should be investing in the future, not necessarily holding on to the past on that one. So I think we have significant savings. I think we should be utilizing it for future growth and investments into the future, rather than being so proud of the amount of time that we can run without revenue. That doesn't seem like it's a good metric for us to have. It doesn't seem like a race worth winning. I guess I should say it like that. When we asked people in the state where we should be investing in, they feel like that there is a level of job creation, so creating an environment where businesses can thrive, and infrastructure development is kind of the two things that people think we should be investing in when we think about economic development. Those are two things we care about a lot: creating the environment where businesses can thrive and create jobs, and helping local communities build out the infrastructure so that they can grow, it matches up with our mission. And so again, I think there's support there as you think about making decisions for growth. There's support from the public to do that.
Josh, could you talk to me a little about the infrastructure? Are you talking human capital infrastructure? What are you?
Commissioner, that's a good question. I actually think that what we're talking about is hard infrastructure. So that's like water, sewer, the infrastructure that we use to the physical infrastructure. I think that the human capital comes from the job creation. However, once we get that foundation built where we have a system that can fund growth for hard infrastructure like water, sewer, curb, gutter, streets, that kind of stuff, I do hope that there's a day where we can be investing in the more philosophical infrastructure that our communities need. And those are the things like amenities, things like programs that help young entrepreneurs get going and things like that.
I'm guessing my question wasn't very good. Like lawyers, human resource, bookkeeping and accounting services. As a small business owner, I can't hire a lawyer generally. But if 16 of us bound together, we could probably have a nonprofit lawyer that would understand us. Same with human resources, same with accounting. So that sometimes binds us from growing. And I'm not sure how to solve that without collaborating.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner, I think our approach to that has been focusing on how do we create more businesses so that there's a market need for that human capital. Again, I think if you focus on that primary employer set and create more jobs and create more employers, then you're going to have more of those services that can be shared by others. And so that's been our focus, is on that primary employer first, rather than trying to pull in a service organization to serve the small amount that's there. We kind of want the market to work, but it's a challenge, no doubt. Yep. If we jump to the next slide, there's a myth. Sorry, if we go back one, there you go. That most people don't want Wyoming to grow. This actually comes up in almost every case. So when we go to a community and they say, "Hey, we want to do this project," we always say, "Whoa, let's take a minute. Okay, let's take a step back and ask, what problem are you trying to solve? What is the barrier to growth here? What is stopping you from growing?" And so we, right or wrong, we sort of like ask people to slow down and really dig into the root cause of their problem. It's not always the most fun because people want to do a project and they want to do the exciting part. And we say, well, let's make sure that we're doing the right project. And over the last few years, as we've done that with people, we've heard a lot of people, we kind of like break it down to the root problem, and people say, well, they don't want to grow. I'm sure you've heard that in your talks with citizens or in your meetings, that we don't want to grow. And so we said, this is happening enough. We need to find out if that's real. Is it really that they don't want to grow? Or who are they? How many are they? All of these things, what's happening? And so we did some polling, and we found out, if we jump to the next slide, that there is actually a lot more support for growth than you think. If we jump onto the next slide, 2/3 of people that were polled, again, 514 registered voters across the state, 2/3 of them said that they will take population growth if it means more opportunities for family, friends, and neighbors. Population growth in Wyoming. Right? Not just economic growth. Economic growth is higher. And people were saying, I would even be willing to deal with longer commute times, which in Wyoming was kind of I get it. I had that 3-minute commute that changed to 9 minutes. I thought my world was going to get rocked. It didn't end. The world didn't end. But, we sort of thought, well, we're not going to hear, people want population growth, but they want it for somebody else, and they don't want to deal with the bad stuff. And it's not true. We actually do want growth, and a good number of us want growth. If we jump to the next slide.
How many respondents did you have for that?
514.
Okay, is that the 65%, or is that the whole?
This is
the whole
65% of the 514.
Okay.
Yeah, you bet. 8 out of 10 people actually want their community to take strong action to grow jobs and focus on the economy. So again, I think what we're saying is, we don't think that it's going to happen organically or magically. We think that it's going to take some concerted effort in the state to do that. I think we've seen a very hands-off approach to it. And if you're in a really small community, you know that acutely. I think if you ask people who are in very, very small communities, they understand how close to the end they are. Because once that last gas station closes or the mechanic shuts down, things change dramatically, quickly. And so people are wanting strong action to happen. And then finally, on this slide, if we jump to the next one, 9 out of 10 agree that keeping and attracting young people is essential to our future, which seems like an obvious statement because it turns out that the future doesn't really exist without young people. I mean, that's kind of how it works. But I think that we've all heard this enough about people leaving the state and our families kind of getting broken apart that we think that this is an important component that we've got to focus on. Well, right now we're not doing so hot.
This is probably the one community where that doesn't apply. We kind of cringe when all the young people start to arrive, but once we're done with the institution, we don't know what we don't have a capacity for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we get to see it. You're right. We get to see it play out for us in folks that come and go. I think in other communities, the way they see it is that the people that are leaving are their family members.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of I don't know. I think that we have that vibrant economy because of that back and forth. But I think other places they feel it a lot more in their heart. So it's a challenge. And I want to be careful of time here. I know that you all have a lot of business to take care of. And so I'll blow through a few of these. This next one is really interesting. That the myth that nobody wants taxes to increase. And I think if you were to go out and ask somebody, would you like your taxes to increase or decrease? Well, you know, humans are going to say they want it to decrease. But I think if you frame the question right and you help people understand, we ask people, would you support slightly higher taxes if it meant more economic opportunity and you knew what the money was going toward? So there's a level of transparency and that it was for economic growth. And 35% said they would support it. Now, that means that 65% said they wouldn't. But if we dig deeper into that data and we look at how people see the economy, those people who saw the economy as trending downward, 50% of them said that they would favor increased taxes in order to change that. So I think what we're starting to see is that people have a realization that they're probably going to have to pay their own way and that we're going to have to take care of our communities and do it ourselves instead of waiting for someone else to do it. And so I think that to me is a good indicator of how people feel about their part in economic growth. So I was actually pretty shocked by that. I thought it would be zero, and I thought it would be absolutely nobody. It's not reality. This next one ties into that, and that is that. Sorry, I'll jump ahead. No, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a couple ahead of you now. Okay, there we go. There's this sentiment out there that low taxes increase economic activity. That is not true. It turns out, if you jump to the next slide, we have a really long experiment that's been running in Wyoming that says that it is not the key to increasing economic activity. In fact, our fiscal system actually incentivizes decline. So I want you to think about that for a second. Our fiscal system in the state is built upon extraction. And the more you can extract and the fewer people that you have, the better off you are. Well, it turns out that is not probably the setup that we need for the long run. Because at some point, those extraction industries are focused or are impacted way more by external forces than we are, than we have any control over, right? And so we're seeing that in coal. We're seeing it in coal, right? The demand is not increasing and we are being challenged. And so our fiscal system today is not set up for the long run. And what we're seeing is that low tax environment is not the only thing that matters for business starts and growth. In fact, it's actually helping keep our business starts low. Just a quick aside on that, I talked to a lot of companies who want to move to Wyoming, and one of the questions that they ask is not how low are your taxes, it's is your tax system sustainable? What is it going to mean in the future for me? Can your communities actually support growth? If I'm going to come here and bring employees here and want to grow in your town, how are your communities going to pay for it? They're not just looking at their own bottom line because they can deal with taxes. What they're looking at is how do they grow their top line? And in Wyoming, it's harder to do because of our tax system. So I think it's something that we need to sort of wrap our head around, that maybe we've got the wrong view of taxes. The next slide is a fun one for me. There's a sentiment out there that we should do nothing because it might cause more problems.
Is this like a NIMBY thing?
You know, you can give whatever acronym you want to it. But what we found is that that all of the simple problems in the world, they've already been solved. And it turns out all the problems that we face today will create more problems. By our solutions will create more problems. It's part of the deal. And so if we jump to the next slide, we actually don't think that there's no such thing as a perfect solution,
Right.
But there is such thing as getting better at solving problems. And it's not a whole lot different than anything else in the world. The more you do something, the better you get at it. And so what we need to do is cycle through problems. We need to work on learning how to solve problems, and we'll get better at it. And I think that that's the part, is that everybody wants to do nothing and just hopefully it'll go away. What we're suggesting is let's plug in, let's get better at solving problems, and we'll continue to have to solve problems. It turns out problems don't go away. Again, I'm preaching to the preachers here. You see that every day. We'll go ahead and jump to the next few slides, and then I'll stand for questions. I could talk about this stuff all day. This is my favorite topic. But I think there's a myth that we have a lot of time in Wyoming, that everything's going to be fine. Just everybody settle down and we'll ride this one out, and another boom will happen and then we'll deal with it and we'll just kind of keep going. I want to jump into this next slide, Ben, if you can. And I want people to understand the slippery slope that we're on. So this cycle that we see in Wyoming is actually happening in rural communities all over the nation. So it turns out that we have a small population, which to a lot of us, we love it because there's wide open spaces. We don't have to, scrunch in line at the store. The Wyoming line is a different thing, right? It's got giant gaps in it. But it turns out that if you're a business and you want to grow and you don't have the workers, you can't grow. And so we don't have enough workers, and therefore the businesses can't grow. So a lot of times they have to leave. A lot of the businesses that we work with in the state have opened up shops in this area of the state, have opened up places on the Front Range so that they can hire more people and grow their business. They still have a presence in Wyoming, but their growth is occurring in another state. That's reality. And so either the jobs decrease or they leave, or they stay the same and there are no more jobs. And then guess what happens? Workers leave. If there's no jobs, you're going to leave. You're going to go. Our world is actually getting smaller. We can go somewhere else. And so that vicious cycle is occurring in Wyoming. And it's very, very painful here. In cities, however, they have the exact opposite. They have more people. Therefore, the businesses that are there can grow and thrive. And therefore, more people are attracted to it. I have a map. It's not on this particular slideshow. There's a map that shows where people go when they leave Wyoming. Anybody want to take any guesses?
I've already seen it.
You've seen it. So you're out. You don't get to, you have cheated or you've studied. They go to the Front Range of Colorado. They go to Houston and they go to Oklahoma City because of the energy sector. They also go to our surrounding states like Billings, and they go to Salt Lake, the Wasatch Front. So they're leaving to these places that are like giant vacuums for population. They're pulling people. Now, there's some data that comes out that says, oh, well, housing is cooling off in Denver. Maybe in Denver itself, but I don't know if anybody's driven down I-25 lately. But
The Front Range.
Denver, to me, goes from Wellington to Colorado Springs, right? Like that is Denver. The Front Range is a giant human vacuum that's pulling people there. And so we're seeing it. And I guess maybe I'll even stop here for a second and maybe field some questions and just talk about the reality. We cannot stop investing in our communities. We actually have to double down on investing in our communities and working to create an environment that is low regulation and has the amenities and has the infrastructure that are needed for businesses to grow. Because if we don't, we will get cleaned out by all of these places around us. It's reality. It's already happening. And so I think what we're trying to help people understand is that we're going to have to take action. We have the wealth to do it. We need to have the means or the guts to do it. But we're going to have to take a pretty hard approach to growth, or we're going to see things slip away really, really fast, because it's not a linear system going down. It actually accelerates as you get closer to the bottom. And so with that, I would happily stand for any questions and talk a little bit about what our next steps are.
I have a couple. Did you have a hard time getting a high respondents rate from the survey? 500 people, or is it people just don't want to take surveys anymore, or the subject matter wasn't applicable in perception?
I don't know the answer to that. We actually work with a polling company. So there's a group called the Terrence Group, and they're a polling company, kind of the gold standard, if you will, in Wyoming for running polls. So I didn't do that personally, and our team didn't, because that actually takes a specific set of skills. I don't know what the response rate was. It will definitely not be our last poll.
I'm sure. And then I guess my other thing is there an industry that is specific to Wyoming? Like, it used to be you can only mine coal in Wyoming because it's Wyoming coal. Is that kind of where we got stuck in this rut, where it's, well, you can only do that here. We can only produce so much natural gas here. I mean, you have to come to Wyoming to do it. Is that how we got stuck with well, we're kind of guarded and we don't have to worry about the future because we'll always have this? Or do you have a perception on it where there is an industry that could be Wyoming centric, that could get people back into the state that wouldn't necessarily help a migration out?
Yeah. That's the question we work on every day.
Okay.
But you're right. Our fiscal system and the fact that these natural resources that have been wonderful and should continue to be wonderful in Wyoming. That's the thing, is we're not saying an or, it's an and. Those have been fantastic for us. However, we don't actually control much of that market. We don't get to make the decisions about that. In fact, Wyoming coal is so great because the Clean Air Act of the early 70s. Turns out that federal legislation was a godsend for us, right? Not so much for Kentucky and West Virginia and Pennsylvania. They are feeling they're like 50 years ahead of us in the downturn, right? And so they've had to change their economies. One of the areas that we think is really exciting for us is manufacturing. We're seeing that in some of our towns. Sheridan is a town that has completely changed its economic outlook by going hard into manufacturing. Okay. That's not the only area that can happen. I think technology is another area that we should be really looking at. So I think there's some really good opportunities, but we have to be more intentional about that, because it turns out that manufacturing doesn't live under the ground, right? There's not like parts under the ground that you go mine. There's not the Tetons that are above ground to go see. These are things that can be anywhere. They're portable, and we need to make sure that they're here. Thanks. Did I answer it?
Yep.
So what's your approach to the legislature on trying to do something with more money from the legislature on this?
Well,
You can watch the video.
it's something. Madam Chair, our approach is to be honest, and to paint the picture from an economist point of view. Wyoming it has a lot of opportunity because we do have the wealth to do some things, but we're going to have to look ourselves in the mirror. And so let me just say that sometimes being honest doesn't get you very far. And Because when we're painting the picture of reality, I'm gonna say, I don't want to believe in that reality. We actually have a really tough road to hoe this session.
That's
As
my
the Wyoming
point.
Business
Yes,
Council.
indeed. I think there's, for all of us.
And so I think this is a time when we've really got to realize that our constituents and our friends and neighbors want growth. And they're going to ask us to stand up and be pro-growth. They're going to stand up and ask us to say the truth, even though it might be really painful. It might cost, we might not have a Wyoming Business Council because of it.
I know, that's what I'm
But I'm
concerned
willing
about.
to say the truth, because if you ask me, it's better to be honest than it is to play that game. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I was just at the governor's office last week and this was a lot of what we talked about, so.
Yeah, just along Terry's lines, getting 25% cut in property taxes. We were at $1.9 million less to invest in our community. Now fiscally, we've done a pretty good job here, I think, over the last many years, and we were able to absorb that. We won't continue to be able to absorb that. And if that continues, what will we invest in? And what will we use to invest? Yeah, I think there's a great story from the 90s where a delegation of Wyoming people went to woo a nationwide bank to come put a regional headquarters here. And they made the low taxes approach and all that. And so what do you think about that? And the bank executive said, not much, right? Because we want our people to live in places that have nice streets with good parks and good schools. And it doesn't sound like your people invest in themselves. So why would we move our regional bank there? And I think about that myself. I mean, we're talking about huge healthcare deserts in Wyoming, hundreds of miles where there's no OBGYN services. 65-year-olds don't have babies.
Yep.
And how are you going to convince people that if there's no OBGYN, and this is just an absolute reality, you can have OBGYN services on I-80 at the border in Rock Springs, Laramie, and Cheyenne. That's it.
Yeah, you're talking about my hometown, Rollins.
Yep.
Yep.
One of the places we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think what you are all talking about is really a key component, and Commissioner Gosar, you said it really well. Why would someone else invest in Wyoming when Wyoming is not willing to invest in themselves? And I think what we've got to take a hard look in the mirror. We've got to say we actually are going to invest in ourselves. It might induce a little risk, but the alternative is much riskier. You mentioned that you took a $1.9 million haircut because of the tax relief that was provided in property tax. And you say, okay, now it's even harder to do. Well, I might suggest, based on the data, that we actually haven't been doing all that well with the money we had. So we cut off our nose to spite our face. And so we're just accelerating that decline. And I think what we have been doing, and Madam Chair, you asked me a really hard question, which is how's that being received? It's not being received well with the legislature. And I don't, and what I will tell you is that is unfortunate, because it turns out that I really believe that the legislature is made up of people who care about Wyoming and they want to see Wyoming succeed. And they need to hear that we care about Wyoming and that there is another way to do it. And it's not a race to the bottom. And so I think we've got to pull together. I think the communities are going to have to speak up. I think that businesses are going to have to speak up and say exactly that. If we're not willing to invest in ourselves, then why should anybody else invest in us? And I think that's a really good way of saying it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Did anyone else have any questions?
All right.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
your time. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
We'll move on to item 11, discuss the holiday lighting at the courthouse. Anthony,
It was just here.
who escaped, we'll come back to this. He knew what was
He
coming.
doesn't want to talk about it.
How it goes. Item 12, present for approval, new liquor license for Old Corral LLC doing business as Old Corral Hotel and Steakhouse, and Phoenix at the Snowies LLC doing business as Phoenix Restaurant. Good morning,
Good
Kayla.
morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I bring to you two new retail liquor license applications. Due to the census, the increase in population, we were awarded two more retail liquor licenses in Albany County. We put out notice and we got two applications. You guys had directed me to move forward with those applications. So in front of you, I have the application for Old Corral LLC doing business as Old Corral Hotel and Steakhouse. Right now, they hold a restaurant liquor license, so they will be transferring their license from restaurant liquor license to a retail liquor license. I have one question on theirs. With the fee for Phoenix, with the new retail liquor license, we prorate that fee. I ask that for Old Corral that we just do the transfer fee of $100 with the processing fee and the advertising, because of the fact that they've already paid a year's worth of their license and it's the same cost. But if we could just do the transfer fee for them, I would ask that we could do that. And then for the second application is, of course, for Phoenix at the Snowies LLC doing business as Phoenix Restaurant. Theirs would be just the prorated fee. I think it's about $564 for their new license. But everything has been sent to the Liquor Commission. Everything has gone through. Jennifer and the sheriff have both reviewed the licenses and everything is good to go. So.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the new retail liquor license, excuse me, for Old Corral LLC, DBA, Old Corral Hotel and Steakhouse, and Phoenix at the Snowies LLC, DBA Phoenix Restaurant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll jump back to 11 now that Anthony's back in the room.
Sorry, I got called away.
Okay,
We figured.
today we're just jumping all around, so it's all right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, really, our Christmas stuff's like 20 years old, it's falling apart. We need new stuff. I don't know what you guys want to do. I don't know how, I think it was a grant 20 years ago that we got all that stuff. I think Adam has patched together stuff over the years. This has mainly been a IT thing, so I'm not sure what we would need. But, I know there's been talk about maybe sponsoring a tree at the park instead of buying all new stuff. But I don't know what you guys want to do.
My concern came from a conversation I had with Ben about getting on the roof and accessing that and trying to get stuff thrown over. This year wasn't bad. I'm guessing there wasn't any
Yeah.
water, but in years
Yeah.
past.
we want to stop that roof as much as we possibly.
Yeah, well, and you know, running extension cords all over the place and through doors and it's just not a very good setup.
Well, I think, this is just my comment. I think it would be good to look at doing a tree maybe at the park, because that's really turning into a really positive for Laramie. But I
Yeah.
think we also need to have a little something here. And maybe we can look into what other kinds of things are available. Because I
Yeah.
don't have any idea.
Well, I don't know exactly what Ben put up, but I know he did string a bunch of lights and stuff out there. So I mean, we have some stuff.
Right. And so that's just, I don't think we want to totally abandon this, but
Yeah,
No, I just wanted
Yeah.
to open the conversation for other options.
yeah.
Madam Chair, you guys do, through the community partner funding, you guys already do give funding to that Winter Light Festival. So
Yeah.
it's not an actual
Oh.
tree that's sponsored, but you do already give money towards it. That, and I
I'm
don't,
glad you said that
and
because,
depending on
because
if,
yes, indeed. we
yeah,
do.
there's that. I know the city moved to kind of a different way of funding them, so it's not through that community partner funding. They fund it through a different pot of money. But I don't know, I'm assuming we'll get requests this year as well for it.
Okay,
Maybe we could think about stringing lights around trees here, because I think here in the Wind Festival coming up this week, some brittle lines are probably not gonna survive, the winds that are being discussed. And
Yeah.
so maybe that would,
I would agree with you, Pete. I was talked to Anthony a little bit. I thought, if we just, it doesn't have to be the big,
Right.
to the music and everything,
Right.
but even if we just put lights on the trees, it doesn't have to be on the building. Just,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of trees that we could string lights on. I even offered up my staff to help hang some lights if we needed to between 8 and 9 when we're not open to the public. I don't know if they like that very much. I did. If we needed some help stringing lights, but I think it looks nice to have it. And with it being so dark, it's nice to have a little extra light during
Yes.
the winter time. Walking
About
out
this
there.
time of year,
Yeah.
it's really very nice.
But I kind of agree with Pete. I think if we just hung some lights just
Right,
out there, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but.
right. I'm not,
Nice to have
I wasn't
something.
talking about elaborate.
Yeah.
But there,
Just
but I was
something
thinking
nice.
that, there's so many opportunities now with all the amazing IT stuff that, it would be worth looking into a lot of different things, at least look at them and see what they cost and,
Maybe I can look into, putting some, on these light poles over here, there's outlets on them. And we have like underground, conduit, so we don't have to run extension cords over the sidewalk. Maybe I can look into installing some outlets on these ones, so we don't have to have extension cords.
well, we don't want
going across the
extension cords
sidewalks.
or anything.
Cause we had that last year and that was not fun for trying to plow the sidewalks, so.
Oh, geez.
And since in this year I've become a real tripping hazard over anything that's more than 1/8 of an inch high. I think that, the more we can do away with electrical cords on the ground, the better. So,
Do we have enough lights to string lights this year? Or would we need?
They did.
Oh,
already.
there are
Yeah.
lights out there? Oh.
Yeah, there's a ton of
How much I look
extension
out the
cords.
window?
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of wires all over the place.
well, and I knew that there were lights up, but
Yeah.
that's why I was saying, we're not in an emergency situation right now.
Yeah,
I think we should look into different
What's that?
different
I-
choices.
if we do get lights and stuff, I guess the main thing is who's gonna pay for it, who's gonna buy them, stuff like that.
Need something that's simple to,
Real
it
easy.
looks nice, but it's simple to install, so you're not.
Right, that's what I was thinking along the line of, some of the different kinds of, like, I have a little, box at home that you shine it up into the tree and it makes it look like it has a jillion mini lights. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there is a cord involved, but,
Well, I had thought about just getting those projectors that you can program whatever you want.
well, that's what this is
Yeah,
a little projector.
a lot of people didn't seem to like that idea.
Well, you can even project on.
As long as it's pretty and fiscally responsible.
Yeah, I think that we should look into that, something like that. That's where I was talking about the IT stuff, but
We've
But I
got the
mean-
rewards money now with our credit cards. Now that we've gone to rewards points, maybe we could use that money
that would be a
to
good
purchase
idea.
lights, because then it's not county funds, it's money coming
It's
back from
savings
the
fund.
bank.
Yeah.
That because we spend money.
And when I first came on as commissioner in 17, we actually didn't have any because we had a problem. And so the tourism board gave us a grant so we could get our Christmas lights turned on. We needed some sort of a box. So this isn't a new issue for us.
And apparently there's some discussion about the radio frequencies. I don't know anything about this, but you're supposed to pay for a slot or something. We've done it in the past and I don't know. Ben, do you know more about this?
I think our radio transmitter's low power enough, we don't have to have a license, is what I was told.
Okay, yeah.
I don't find it to be really important to have music to the radio.
It makes sense to me not to have extension cords across. So whatever we do.
Low
So
maintenance.
let's do something with low maintenance, so it does get in the way of you guys plowing. That's way more important than Christmas lights.
And that, I think that's one of the things that's nice about those projectors. So that's not, I'm not saying that's what we should.
So projectors, that's what we're doing.
We should look at the
You've got
projectors.
about 11 months to figure this out and then we'll figure out how to pay for it.
It's on sale coming like next week.
Right.
What now?
That is the
The
time to look,
sales,
yeah.
the sales like,
After
for
Christmas.
all the Christmas decorations start right after
Well,
Christmas.
And
So
just in Anthony's spare time, he can look around there.
Be really
Like I said, he's
excited.
got 11 months.
But
Maybe we should just
I think it was really good to bring this forward, though.
Yeah.
send out an email for the coalition of Christmas willing who want to be involved in this and have some
Yeah.
ideas.
What about an alternative idea, a permanent LED lighting that's attached and colors can change for red, white and blue during 4th of July? Nobody ever has to put it up every single year. One and done. I mean.
Now and then we
have
can do
different
blue and
options.
we can do green for.
Yeah, St. Patrick's
law
Day, yeah.
enforcement services.
Yeah.
Tons of houses that have that permanent LED lighting.
like in the lights that are already outside.
Yeah, but that's all, they usually wire all that in.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot on like eaves of houses.
it's something that Tough Guys does too locally.
Yeah,
It might just be a conversation we have with Mr. Welper when the 1% community partnership funding comes up too.
And if we have rewards money,
I don't know how much we have, but it'd be something that we can look into.
Okay.
Well, we can say we did discuss this.
Yep, it was thoroughly discussed.
Okay.
Did that help you, Anthony?
What's that?
Did it help you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He wants a clear directive, I think, and I don't think he's.
So,
gonna
no,
get
do-
one.
Yeah. I'm not the most decorative person, but
Well, we've tossed you a
yeah.
Riata so you can rope in what you can find.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Item 13, discuss and take action on roofing at the fairgrounds for multipurpose building and activities building.
Good morning, Commissioners. I was not able to join you in person today, so I am joining you via Zoom. I had sent in, and in your packets, you should have the information from previous quotes for both the multipurpose and the activities building. For the quotes were done about a year ago. There's two different companies, Bighorn Roofing and Stonescape, and we have a couple of different options for roofing according to Stonescape. Bighorn is the one that did the activities building roof about 25 years ago. And so they quoted the same style of roof that they did then. But I attached it all for you all to see.
Yeah, so Taylor, you obviously weren't there, but I was a little concerned with one of Stonescape's estimates because it said, due to improper seaming of panels by previous roofer, this estimate carries no warranty as the system has now been exposed to elements over time. We cannot predict the long-term issues that they may have caused.
Oh, I have not ever seen that on there. Oh, now I see it on the silicone coating one.
Option 3 silicone coating. I don't know if that's true. That's just one person's perspective on it.
I don't
but it
see
is-
that on their other one, so that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I guess I don't know enough about roofing if that will be remediated by a different type of roofing. So it'd be nice to have Bighorn respond to that. It'd be difficult to go back, if that is true, to go back to a company that did not standard practice in roofing is what it's alleging here. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't.
Sure.
I'm just saying that caught my attention.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen that. It's not on their other ones. I just looked because they did the exposed fastener. I wonder if it was just for that type of roofing, that option of roofing, because it's not on their other quotes. But I can also double check because I am not sure who did the roof on the beef barn. I just know on the activities building, it was paid with rec board funds 25 years ago. Bailey and I turned that in last year, I believe, for the activities building roof, and we did not get any funding in that for the rec. I think it was last year. Bailey can correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
We're getting to the point with both of these roofs where we need to do something. The beef barn / multi-purpose, it's our shooting range and beef barn. It leaks inside the building. And we have issues on both ends of the barn, in the shooting range as well as in the beef barn. And then in the activities building, that PVC, I think it's like a PVC coating that Bighorn did 25 years ago. It is starting to crack around the screws, the top of the screws. And we're going to end up with some big issues in here if we don't do something soon.
Madam Chair, so Taylor, I'm assuming what you're asking for is help with funding
Yes.
for these. And then also, I guess this would be a question for Jennifer. This would be something that would have to go out for RFP, correct?
Yes, and I did talk to Taylor about that, and I told her I would help her put it back out for RFP. We just needed some direction about funding before we took that.
So I talked to Tracy a little bit before the meeting, and we do have money in the building reserve fund, but it would be totally up to you guys on how you want to move forward. I think it's something we have to look forward to or look at. There are buildings, they are owned by the county. And it looks like 25 years ago is when when the roof was done. It's probably lived its life as a roof.
So the beef barn is 25 years old or just about there. And then the activities building roof was done 25 years ago.
Taylor, I'm going to ask you this very gingerly. Which one's worse?
In all honesty, I would say the beef barn is, but if we have a bad storm or something happens, they could both be in the same situation.
I'm just wondering if we have to do the funding, stagger them.
Sure, and we could totally look at that. I would be okay with that, just as long as we could get both of them done. But the beef barn first, and then the activities building following shortly after. I'm just concerned that if we do have a big weather event, that we're going to have big issues in the activities building.
Jennifer, is there a way that you can put them both out, but accept only one or the other?
Yes.
Because sometimes you do get not a 2-for-1, but you get a better deal if you do.
Well, if you have a construction company that comes in, they do one building, then they do the other, they're not pulling equipment off and taking it somewhere else and having to bring it back. Yes, Rob.
Bridge is gonna be in that situation where it needs its roof resealed sometime too, so I don't know if we wanna make it have 3 projects. Our money Tracy knows where it's
2018?
Yeah.
But if maybe we want to loop it in.
Yeah,
That's why I was saying when you were just bringing up.
we keep everybody there. It costs them less money and should save us some.
Or if it's going to be less expensive to hire 5 guys and put them on the county payroll and buy materials. And that's what the school district's done in the past. In projects that have to happen campus wide is they bring on a temporary.
I remember when the county hired 3 guys to help tear down this building.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Back in 06.
That's how I got hired.
Oh, no, it was before that then.
Yeah.
Is
2002.
2003.
Yeah, that's when they started doing that.
And we moved, like the treasurer's office was on the front yard in 2005. I know when we moved in because that's.
Oh, I remember that. Absolutely. I do remember that.
Rob, do you know how old your roof is?
It was built 2004, so it's getting close.
So
you've got the original with no probably
Right, yep.
minimal
But
repairs.
we are starting to have a few little leaks show up. So
well,
And then the sheriff's office will be
Here we
another
go.
10 years down the road, or the SAR building. How's Rock River look?
it should be good. It was 2011.
Yeah.
2010.
so do you want to put all 3 of those on there and?
I'm
what we come up
happy
with?
to, if you would like me to do that, and we can structure it to have a bid individually and for all 3. And then we can accept what we need to accept.
And then,
Excuse me.
go ahead, Rob.
Wouldn't they almost need it individually for the payment, Tracy, or how's that work?
Break it out.
As long as it can be broken out.
We're paying for the fairgrounds, it's really no different. I mean, how we actually physically pay it and voucher it would be separate
Oh.
because of the specific.
The way this,
contracts.
that's what I'm saying, the specific purpose.
They might get 3 checks, but they'll still get the same amount.
Yeah, that, I got you. I just didn't want to get in trouble with the,
Right.
how it came out of the.
And
We
then
appreciate that.
I think that the issue of the roofing that the other company besides Bighorn was concerned about needs to be looked at by whoever bids this.
And
That makes sense.
Possibly the county engineer.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah,
so we
I
have a-
can organize that with Jake too, to come out and look. I just find that I did not see that, Pete, so I'm glad you caught that because I had not seen that on, and it's not on any of their other ones. So I wonder if it's just that style of roofing, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. I didn't see it either, Taylor, so I was.
So. All I
Well,
know
do
is
we need
that
a-
they're all expensive.
Yes, that's very true.
Do we need a motion directing the county attorney to or generate RFP?
No, we can just, we'll bring the RFP, if that's what we want to do for all 3 buildings. We'll get the RFP done and then bring it forward to the future meeting.
For official, okay.
I guess I do have a question. If we have the RFP put out to where it can be staggered and we can accept bids, whatever. So let's say that we get the beef barn fixed and we have the bid for the activities building, we have something happen. Can we then, do we have to go back out for RFP or can we just go ahead, like with your guys' approval and all of that, go ahead and get the activity building worked on?
It would have to go back out for RFP because we would accept a bid for the buildings that we're going to put the roof on and we would reject the other bid, so it would have to go back out.
Okay, because my concern is if we do, this building is the one that would be second, but if we do that, this is also the building that is the evacuation site for the county when we have big issues on the interstate or issues in the winter.
Or fire in the summer or.
You know, all the things.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure which account are we looking at this coming out of and what is that current balance? Is it the county building contingency?
The building reserve.
1377? Okay, and that's 1.8. Okay.
1.884.
Well, let's find out how much it's gonna cost us.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get a hold of Jen and we'll schedule a time to work together on the RFP.
Do we need a motion on this? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for stepping up in your comments. Rob, thank you. Item 14, present for approval application for the Wyoming Treatment Courts Funding Program for state fiscal year 2027 and 2028 in the amount of $235,469.44 and $17,500 in surcharge funding to serve at least 16 juvenile participants in the Albany County Integrated Juvenile Treatment Program. Heather, good morning.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is our state application for funding through the Wyoming Judicial Branch for our programs. 2 years ago, they went to a 2-year model, so we're continuing with that. So we're applying for the next 2 years of funding in this amount for our juveniles.
Any questions, Pat?
No, this is just one heck of an application to try to dive through with the Excel spreadsheet. The page to
Well, this
page.
is nothing.
Haley is a magician.
But we had to leave it in Excel format.
I noticed it is very hard to parse this.
Yeah.
I just have one question about recidivism rates, and that actually applies to your adults, but would equally apply to the juvenile.
Juveniles, I honestly haven't looked at juvenile recidivism in a while. I can say out of the last 3.5 years, we've only had one juvenile that we've had in program enter the adult system. All others have stayed out of trouble. So it's really good for juveniles.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I move we approve the application for the Wyoming Treatment Courts Funding Program for state fiscal year 27 and 28 in the amount of $235,469.44 with a $17,500 in surcharge funding to serve at least 16 juvenile participants in the Albany County Integrated Juvenile Treatment Program.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 15, present for approval application for the Wyoming Treatment Courts Funding Program for state fiscal year 2027 and 2028 in the amount of $374,186.40 and $7,200 in surcharge funding to serve at least 40 adult participants of the Albany County Court Supervised Treatment Program.
And same, the application is for the next 2 years requesting funding. If I can jump on the recidivism question.
I was gonna ask.
Sure. We are about 35% recidivism for our adult participants. We just did our annual update for our federal grant, and that's where our numbers were sitting at for the last year.
Is that what's the average nationally?
Average nationally is much higher. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is higher. I also would note, just as a side piece of information, the state, with the shift to the judicial branch, has looked at some economic impacts. And in looking at specifically the state grant or the state funding that we're applying for every dollar invested, it was a investment in the county of $6 per participant. So we have a return on investment of $6 for every dollar invested per adults.
So I have another question. Does part of the program include intense nutritional training and supplements?
We have in the past partnered with Sensible Nutrition. Is that what you're asking for the?
Well,
Yes.
I didn't know it's specific. But.
Yes, we have in the past. We have offered all sorts of events such as healthy living, clean eating, those kind of things. It's not mandatory, but it is things that we offer optionally for our participants. We have provided crock pots and recipes for healthy living, those kind of things.
Okay, so it's pretty minor.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It is. You're welcome.
And Heather, does your program know about the healthy living through the University of Wyoming, that program that people can enroll in?
I'm not familiar with that program. I'll need to look into that.
Yeah, it's, you can get people to go. It's a really useful thing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Because where they do real intense nutritional, they're getting good food and they're getting the right supplements. The recidivism is huge. I mean, it goes like to 80-90%.
Yeah.
I move that we approve the application for the Wyoming Treatment Court Funding Program for state fiscal year 2027 and 2028 in the amount of $374,186.30 and $7,200 in surcharge funding to serve at least 40 adult participants in Albany County's court supervised treatment program.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 16, present for approval 2026 volunteer assistance grant application in the amount not to exceed $5,000 for the purpose of purchasing parts and equipment for Albany County volunteer firefighters. Good morning, Chad.
Madam Chair, Commissioners. This is a grant. Essentially, we're going to ask for two pieces to it. There's a water storage bladder at Hubbard's covered up at the Laramie Peak Fire Hall. Those have a use life, and I'm not entirely sure when it was installed, but roughly around 13 or 14. So it's been there a dozen years, and it's at the end of its life. So That would be one of the items we're asking for with this grant. The other items are part of a program that we've been very excited about this year, and it's been working out really, really well. In partnering with Road and Bridge and training their employees to be firefighters with cooperation with the superintendent, it's been a fantastic program. We've had a few what I call proof of concept experiences with the Road and Bridge guys. Our little event at the 310 out by the Love's truck stop was an excellent example of how we can quickly bring that equipment to bear. The heavy equipment beat me there. I wasn't in too much of a hurry, but they were there when I got there. It was super nice to have that stuff there. We're able to utilize that for some of the stuff we did, and we're incredibly helpful. So in partnering with Road and Bridge and getting this stuff done, we're going to try to help them get stood up with some of the equipment that they need. A deputy warden has come up with some numbers on that, and it would max out this grant plus a bunch. Fire stuff's just very expensive. Pants are $100, shirts are $120, shelters are $600. It just adds up super fast. So that's what we would be asking for on this grant. And stand for questions, comments, or discussion.
It buys one fire radio.
Yeah. it's easy come, easy go.
That's right. Yeah.
I move we approve the 2026 volunteer assistant grant application amount not to exceed $5,000 for the purposes described.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
I got ahead of myself, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention where the matching funds were coming. I apologize. We have a significant accounts receivable from the state and the federal government right now. Thank you, Tracy. And so, depending on when our those revenues come in, we won't be asking this board for funding. We have funding sources, but it's unclear depending on our revenues where that will come from. We have it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Item 17, present for approval, joint Albany County and City of Laramie revised 1% community partner application.
Good morning, Commissioners. This has been in front of you about a month ago as a discussion item. This is the final draft of it. Council will not be approving it until their first meeting in January. We missed the deadline for their meeting tonight. But with Mayor Cumby, Micah Richardson, and Will Bowling, and then Nancy Oakland Potter, this is the final version we came up with. So because I brought this to discussion, Jennifer asked that I bring the final version for your approval. And that March 24th date, you can put on your calendars because that will be your joint meeting with the city council.
And nothing's changed since you presented it to council.
I did add in a little more clarification on the not-for-profit and nonprofit. And then Jennifer added more legal language for me. Other than that, it was just some formatting things. Okay. When I put it into Google Forms, it changed some stuff. So.
And they're aware that if they don't do the Google Doc, then they can forward it. Or we can facilitate.
We are hoping majority will do the Google. I mean, majority of people do have a Gmail account. The alternative is if they do not have a Gmail account, they will reach out to Nancy or myself and we will get them the fillable PDF. We are still encouraging everybody to do it through the Google form because not all of our data is there too. And we can easily pull things from there. Okay. But there is another option for those who refuse to.
And more, you're doing it online or.
Yeah, we have a county grants Gmail account because the state requires me to, because I can't do things with the state unless I have a Gmail account. And there's other portals I have to have an account with because of the grants that we have. So it's not uncommon.
Yeah. Well, I move to approve the joint Albany County and City of Laramie revised 1% community partner application. Thank you for doing this, Jennifer.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey.
Thank you. Item 19, present for approval, First Amendment to agreement between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming and Greater Wyoming Big Brothers Big Sisters for additional juvenile protection and diversion services in the amount of $92,008 through June 30th, 2026.
Madam Chair, I think you missed item 18.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll
It's
go
very
back and
si-
do
it's
item
very-
18. I mean, I'm
it's
just
very
jumping.
similar.
Thank you.
Yes.
Present for approval Amendment 1 to the contract between Wyoming Department of Family Services and Albany County Board of Commissioners for the fiscal year 2025-2026 Community Juvenile Service Board grant funding in the amount of $92,008.
So this fall, we were approached by DFS that there's additional funding for our CJSB. We were able to apply for 29,000 more. So this is just the amendment to receive those funds.
Move that we approve the Amendment 1 to the contract between Wyoming Department of Family Services and Albany County Board of County Commissioners for fiscal year 25-26 Community Juvenile Service Board grant funding in the amount of $92,008 through June 30th, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, now we'll go on to 19. Present for approval First Amendment to agreement between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming and Greater Big Brothers Big Sisters for additional juvenile prevention and diversion services in the amount of $92,008 through June 30th, 2026.
We contract with Big Brothers Big Sisters to complete that project. So this is just an amendment to update that amount.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the First Amendment to agreement between Board of County Commissioners of Albany County, Wyoming and Greater Wyoming Big Brothers Big Sisters for additional juvenile prevention and diversion services in the amount of $92,008 through June 30th, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mhm.
Item 20, accept bids for inmate medical services for Albany County Sheriff's Office at the Albany County Detention Center. Good
Madam
morning.
Chair, Commissioners, good morning. You guys should have all of the bids that were submitted for inmate medical at ACPC in front of you. And then also a copy of the rating sheet that I submitted in as well, as you can see from the rating sheet on there, with the 4 sections that we had for just general experience, prior experience, understanding of the RFP and educational. Top bid getter was Core Health. So that's who we're recommending to move forward in terms of getting the bid for jail medical this morning. What questions do you guys have?
I don't know, it was a lot of documentation to go through. Bless your heart for doing it in a short amount of time.
Not a problem. Do you want me to explain, how the points were awarded for each contractor that submitted the bid?
I don't know that specifically, but why would you go with Core Health? I guess was just over.
No, overall, so for two of the bids that came in for financial reasons, we can't, as a county, can't afford them. For the other two, Core Health and 22nd Century Technologies, Core Health is already in our jail and basically submitted an RFP for everything that we asked for in that RFP, and they're as well to continue doing what they're doing. 22nd Century did come down or was a little bit lower in cost, but they basically kind of cut the staffing requirements that we asked in that RFP. And so we would have a little bit less coverage than what we currently already have in the jail. And to be honest with you, that's just a risk I'm not willing to take in terms of the medical that we provide within that facility. So that's the reason that that have chosen Core Health to move forward in getting that bid for medical services within the jail.
And then I guess I had one question. I believe, was it Med Health were they including in part of their bid, the intake screening that would normally be done by the hospital, or was that just a service they threw in on top, a la carte?
That was part of their a la carte.
Okay.
Med Health.
I know it was quite a bit more.
And that bid is kind of based, it fluctuates cost and some services based on average daily population was one of the main reasons why we decided not to go in there. So if my average daily population is low, it actually gets to be cost.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something that we were already paying the hospital to do, that they would supplement in-house. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
I was looking at the cost of what Core Health charged prior to, and what are the corporate support costs, the risk management costs? That's a $75,000 increase. That wasn't on the original, like from the first time that they bid. And then also their insurance indemnification went up from 35,000 to 80,000, which I get insurance is going up, but then their travel fees are $30,000 and they were 2,000 prior to. So I guess my question is that's a huge increase, almost $100,000 from the previous bid. What are they doing different now that they weren't doing then?
One of the main differences that they're doing, the cost of that contract has gone up. The years that we've had it is a lot of that travel is their on-site visits from their primary healthcare providers, so their doctors, their technicians, manager of their nursing services that come down there. Also in that contract, you see that we have quarterly meetings to go over essentially the services that they're providing, plus any issues that we have coming up through there as well. So those costs have gone up over those 4 years, and that's included in the price that they put in there as well.
Are they using locums to staff where they can't hire regular employees? And I guess that's a 25 to 40% premium when you have to hire locums.
Right. So we use local people to come and staff the jail that are hired through Core Health, and that's always the first option. That's something that I've requested of them that they've been here. But for those few kind of gaps in service where they're not able to find a local RN or a local LPN to come in and fill those gaps, then yes, they'll use a travel nurse, which they have internally through their own department to bring people in. So that's where some of those costs come up as well.
So for information from public, what's the cost per inmate per day?
What costs are you asking about? Like,
About their medical costs?
Is Core Health at $840,000? It's $65 so
At an average of 52.
Yeah, we bid it at an average. We have a yearly average daily population of about 52 inmates.
And I don't know where the score sheet was, Sheriff. I
should be an Excel spreadsheet.
Well, I think it's important that the public knows what this costs.
It was forwarded in the email from Sheriff. There are a couple of calculation errors in there where it just didn't include like the last column.
Oh,
I went through everything on it. Okay. I went through everything in correspondence.
There's basically 3 average daily costs that you can calculate. There's the average daily rate that we charge to take inmates out, from other entities into our jail. And we charge roughly about an average of $100 a day for that. There's the actual cost of what it costs to run the jail. And I don't have that number in front of me, but essentially you would take essentially 1 day's worth of all of your employees' salaries, all of the equipment, utility costs, and the people in there, and then go ahead and calculate what that costs. And that's quite a bit higher. That yearly budget for our jail is roughly a little bit over 2 million. So it's quite a bit. For your medical costs that come in, if you do trying to do the math real quick, if I do $850,000 divided by.
It's $95 an hour over a 24-hour period year round is what we're paying for medical.
Per person.
No, just aggregate. $96 an hour is what the county's paying for medical at this rate.
Which is roughly about the same as you would pay for just about every other type of medical service that you would get, whether that's in the public sector or in the private sector.
But they're not they're 24 hours a day.
It's not that's aggregate. That's
a 24-hour. Ours is not a 24.
yeah.
Ours
It's 16 hour. Yeah. But they did have a caveat for emergency.
We do have on call.
Yeah. Is it telehealth at that point?
It depending on the services, yes. So we actually have a physical on-call person for physical medical needs. We have an RN that's on call. If it's a mental health issue, then we have that telehealth option.
Sheriff, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this ahead of time. I looked at this late last night. My only statement would be if we're gonna go with Core Health over TCMI, TSCTI, the difference annually is $123,700. If we're not going with the lowest cost one, we need to have something written up as to why we're not, so that we have that written justification of why we're not using that lowest cost.
No problem.
Yeah.
Today is just accepting the bids. It's not signing the contract. So those contract negotiations will come later.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's a lot to go through. Like I said, bless your heart for sitting there and trying to parse, because each one is phrased a little differently and they offer, I'm sure.
Different services.
Yeah, different phrasing on the same service or that kind of thing is, I'm assuming that's a industry thing to prevent your competitor from being able to cut and paste and throw. So we just need to accept the bids, or we need to approve Core Health for that dollar amount.
Accepting the bids and then approving Core Health as the winner of the bid.
Okay.
I move we accept the bids for the inmate medical services for the Albany County Sheriff's Office, the Albany County Detention Center, and award the bid to Core Health. Is that what you do?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Item 21, present for approval grant agreement between Wyoming State Parks and Albany County Sheriff's Office for trail ranger patrol and education within the Medicine Bow National Forest and Thunder Basin grasslands.
Yes, Commissioners, this is a grant application that we submitted through Wyoming State Parks for us to do snowmobile ORV enforcement and education in the Medicine Bow National Forest. It's a 2-year grant. So this year and next year for a total of $15,000. So roughly about $7,500.
You answered my question.
I don't have any questions. Move that we approve the grant agreement between Wyoming State Parks and the Albany County Sheriff's Office for trail ranger patrol and education within the Medicine Bow National Forest and Thunder Basin grassland.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 22, present for approval, purchase of 3 Ford F-150 police responders from Ken Garf Ford.
Yes, so this is on your agenda, a little bit of a unique situation. The Wyoming Highway Patrol purchased 3 police package Ford F-150s for their fleet, and it came in the wrong color. So Fortunate for us, those are the same trucks that we order and happens to be the exact same color that we have in our fleet. And so those vehicles are considered used and are being sold as a discount from Kingar Ford. You guys have a memo in there explaining some of the exemptions that I'm claiming to forego the bid process so that we can immediately purchase those vehicles and add them into our fleet. It provides a lot of benefits from us. One, we don't have to go through the waiting period that we would normally do when we submit bids. When we submit bids through the commission and then we accept the bids and award the contract, it's usually anywhere between another 6 to 9 months before we're in receiving those vehicles in. And so that cuts that time frame down quite a bit. This also will basically complete the fleet that we have at the Albany County Sheriff's Office, and it'll eliminate the need to make another bid for vehicles next year. So really it is kind of one of those things where this opportunity is fallen in our lap. And
so this gets you 2 years worth of vehicle. You're still receiving the last go round and haven't been received yet.
We've received them. They're being outfitted right now. So, but this one we'll be able to go ahead and get those last 3 that we need and immediately get started on outfitting those. And so it should, like I said, eliminate the need for us to replace any vehicles next year, provided that nothing catastrophic or a large wild game doesn't plow into one of our vehicles and requires a replacement.
You have the space in your budget, Aaron, for this?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Will you be trading other vehicles in then?
Not for this one. We will, as we move forward down the line and we decommission those vehicles, when we do go back out to bid, instead of just kind of the 3 vehicles we normally have to trade in, we'll have closer to 5 or 6. So that's one of the other benefits that I didn't explain, is that should lower our costs quite a bit for that second year bid, because we'll have more vehicles to trade in.
Do you have any questions?
I don't.
All right, I move to approve the purchase of 3 4 F-150 police responders from Ken Garth as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 23, present for approval quote from Axon Enterprises Incorporated to set pricing for body worn cameras, digital storage, and tasers.
Yes, in front of you, you have a quote from Axon for our body cameras, digital media storage for the body cameras, and then our tasers. Our contract, it doesn't end with Taser or Axon until I believe May of 2026. But by signing the quote today, we can lock in some discounted pricing to where we don't have to contend with the upcharge that's coming next year. As you'll see, like on that first page, it'll show you what the 60-month contract is. And then you'll get to see what the savings is just if we sign the quote today. This is just a quote. This isn't the contract. Essentially, we will look to sign that contract closer to the end date next year on there. But as you can see kind of from that front page, by signing the quote today, because of the rising costs of that equipment, we will save $267,000.
Just a quick question. If you were to not, for whatever reason, extend the next time, you have 5 years of video that Axon has control over. How do they transfer that video to?
They do transfer. We would have to provide the mechanism for them to transfer that over to us.
Okay.
So, which can be costly.
Right.
right now it's a cloud-based system. So on government server that holds all of that digital information. So all of those records that we have for, to be honest, just about everything. So we've integrated our body cameras into almost every aspect of police work that we do in the sheriff's office. So it is a gigantic amount of data.
Yeah. And do you have body cams on in the detention center?
Yes. Yeah, every single one of my deputies have body cams on there. So.
And then it looks like they're wanting this contract executed net 30. So they're gonna want the bulk of the $750,000 on an acceptance of this contract?
No.
Okay.
I think it's annual billing.
Yeah.
No, because the payment terms net 30, they don't differentiate. I just want to make sure that we're not having to pony up $750,000.
No, we're not putting up any money.
Okay.
We're signing the bid today.
Okay.
And then, like I said, when we negotiate that contract, it is on.
So it renews every May based on the pricing on this contract.
No. What do you mean renews every May?
So
the billing or the
billing? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I did find the payment summary. That's fine. Okay.
I move we approve the quote from the Axon Enterprises, Inc. to set pricing for body worn cameras, digital storage, and tasers as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
Item 24, present for concurrent City Council Resolution 2025-94, Albany County Board of Commissioner Resolution 2025-018, a resolution appointing one member of the Laramie Regional Airport Joint Powers Board.
Well, I guess I can take this as the representative. Chief Dan Johnson has been on the board and would like to serve again. As you all well know, fire and rescue is part of an airport's operations. Having the chief of the fire department is super helpful, not only for the processes of that, but also equipment ideas and places where airports can find maybe reduced price equipment. And so I think Chief Johnson doesn't want to come down on the force. As a pilot, I appreciate having fire and rescue available. Good things not right.
I have no problem. I move that we concur with the City Council Resolution 2025-94. Albany County Board of Commissioners Resolution 2025-018, a resolution appointing one member to the Laramie Regional Airport Powers Board, Chief Dan Johnson.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. You just appointed Dan Johnson to the airport board once again. Item 25, executive session. 24A.
24.
Oh, I forgot about 24A. Thank you. And I have the note right here.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. And thank you for letting me squeeze this on today's agenda. For our county rules for the property tax refund program, I am to report to you by the end of this month. So thank you for not having to have a special meeting. No, just kidding. I've given you all the attachments that I believe will be scanned in at a later time. I don't know if Cammie scanned them in yet but you have the originals. This is all the statistics for our property tax refund program since its inception for the tax year 2022. You can see that this year we've had 117 applicants. We have approved 112 of those applicants for payment. 5 were denied, and the reasons for the denials were 2 were missing backup documentation and did not return requests from our office to get that documentation. And 3, their income was just too high for the program. There are 103 applicants that are approved at the tier 1, which is the 100%. And then 9 of them at the 65% that, which is tier 2. On the last 2 pages, those are all the applicants, their incomes, their zip codes they live in, and their property taxes, whether they received a state refund or not, or whether they even applied for a state refund or not. It kind of gives you an idea of the income level of our applicants. I also, with this, I have 112 vouchers that need commissioner signatures on them. But due to the confidential nature, I would prefer if you guys came to my office. I have all the backup documentation with them. So if any of you would like to volunteer to sit in my office, I'll play Christmas music if I absolutely have to, if that will get you
Well,
there.
that's better. That's
Snacks, well, I have some snacks. I'm sure we can find a Christmas cookie or something in our gingerbread,
keep up the
Jurassic
string.
gingerbread area.
I'll be happy to come up beside.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank
If you have any questions.
I was gonna say, you're probably gonna come do payroll vouchers anyway, so.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
And just for the record, it looks like over $85,000 was granted. Between
Oh shoot, the total,
the 100% and the 65%.
yes, 85,204.
Okay.
I have the same thing, yeah. Yeah, which is down a lot from last year, and I think that's because all the other relief options that are out there now. They weren't necessarily available for the 2024 tax year, but I think people were getting other relief and chose those routes. I can't explain why we have that many less, but.
Tracy, just so I understand, of the 112, 103 did not pay any property tax.
They can get up to 75% of their property taxes.
Between the state and the county.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some.
There's some.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what we need to do, but I want to say thank you all for
Yeah.
doing this. Thank you for providing this. Really do appreciate the property tax work you guys have done over the years. I wish other counties would have done it. We might not be at the same legislative place if they did.
I cannot take any of the credit. My staff, they worked individually with people who needed help. They called or reached out in any way they could to all the state applicants. Well, we kept copies of all their information so we could just get them on there. I have a worksheet. Brianna in my office is an Excel genius. So my job is made very easy by my staff, and I give them all the credit. They do all the work. They help all the people. They get all the copies. They're going through researching. If they have other houses, they have more vehicles than they're allowed to claim. They do all that work. So they do an excellent job. It's not me.
Thank you.
You've got to remember in about 15 days, it's election year, so you might want to shift the narrative a little bit.
The best managers hire the best people.
That is true. That's yes.
So there you have that. So remember that come election day? Thank you.
Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy. Item 25, we move into executive session pursuant Wyoming statute 16-4-405A, triple I, and Wyoming statute 16-4-405A, double I. Thank you, everyone.
Do we have to move?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I move that we move into executive session pursuant to Wyoming statute 16-4-405A, subsection double I and triple I.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
At 11:27.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna take advantage of this.
I was gonna say, we need to
Break
make
it.
a take a final break.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I want all the things.
She's very
And I want
demanding.
them, I am,
You gotta be kidding.
and I want them when I want them. That's the
I
other
want
problem.
them.
Hot kettle black.
Got a little bit of break here. I think Terry's
Yeah.
gonna use it.
There's one there, I'll open this. Yeah. How are you?
Thank you. And then you'll have to go into more and start recording again. We forgot to do it.
We want to return to regular session.
I move we return to regular session and leave executive session at 11:50.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 28, action if needed regarding executive session.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the order of declared nuisance in the case I'm gonna screw this up. By the Board of Albany County Commissioners, Albany, Wyoming, v. Sarah E. Griffin.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting.
Certainly, we understand that. We've all done it. Okay, item 29, approve payroll and vouchers.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Seeing no further business between the Board of County Commissioners, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries and adjourned.